And the theme today is two things. I don't know which one's going to be the title because they're both sort of the same thing. One's the question and one's the answer. Is this the end of the separation of church and state as we know it in the Western tradition, not just the American tradition, in the English-speaking world or in the Western European Christian tradition? Just remember that Augustine's master work is called The City of God, and it is a sort of an exegesis on the problem of church and state. And he calls the gods of the Romans, the pagan gods, he calls them, it's really a great line. He says, they are the gods that lied. I do these things not so much as like, I don't really think that I'm talking to a certain like Christian or any sort of religious sect. I do them more like in a literary way. Because that's the thing. You can look at all these texts and so forth, whether you're going to read Augustine like his philosophy or a church father, I don't care. We do it all the same. So I don't know how to do green screens on here. I think I have to use another software, but here's the green screen that I was going to use right here. Can you see that? Okay. American ISIS. So in the back of my mind, I think I've been building up to this kind of, pardon me just a second. Building up to this conclusion. And as we see the violence that's happening in America and our complete inability to confront it in any way. We have American ISIS. This isn't like me being cute, like going, let me tell you something, Linda. We have domestic troops trained by foreign troops roaming the fucking country, going into hospitals, churches, schools, wherever they want. They can come to your home. You have to understand there's I think FDR and Churchill had this conversation one time where they said, probably on their seventh cocktail, where Winston Churchill said that what makes us different from the people we're fighting, the fascists, is that a coal miner can come home to his little cottage and close the door and no one's going to break down the door and stomp on his face or something like that. And they both, in their Anglo-American way, were like, yeah, that's what makes us special. That does not apply to America anymore. Doesn't apply to the UK either. I'm quite convinced that if I flew to the UK, I would be taken in custody because of my social media. The reason I'm on Substack is because I've been kicked off of TikTok from doing lives. And I had to go through my little questionnaire. And I posted that yesterday. But American ISIS is a paramilitary organization. Somebody did a TikTok video this morning and said the ICE agents are like the Confederates. And I was like, yeah, that was my thesis for 5 years. You're going to wake up into the Confederacy. Washington, D.C. is the Confederacy. Trump is Andrew Johnson. We are recreating slavery. We have bounty hunters who answer to nobody, terrorizing brown people and others. Okay. And you have no way to resist them. Not legally, not physically, not spiritually, nothing. We have American ISIS. Hold on, that's a little much, don't you think? No. You don't know what ISIS is. You don't know what Al Qaeda is. ISIS, when you say war on terror, the terror is made by the West. ISIS are not, what's the word I'm looking for? The jihadis of the Middle East are not organic, self-developing systems. Okay. Like Syria wasn't taken over by some sort of internal thing that just took on Assad. No, it was promoted by Turkey and Israel. Now, none of this I could say on TikTok. I would already get the misinformation thing. I know this because I've studied it for 15 years, 20 years. And Trump met with a guy, and he even jokes about it. He's like, oh, yeah, he used to be a member of Al Qaeda, but now, we're going in a different direction. We have American ISIS people. We have the president of the United States meeting with ISIS. We have the president of the United States who has converted veterans, prison guards, policemen into a paramilitary mercenary force that's a lot like the Hessians. That's a lot like the troops that were sent from Missouri to Nebraska and Kansas. And this is what started what's called Bleeding Kansas. Okay? It's all the same thing. But my big thrust for you today on a Sunday is these people have the reason we can't push back against them in any way. We're seeing we don't have any religious backing to resist them. And we don't have any legal backing either. What is the governor of Minnesota going to go do? Like deputize everybody with a hunting license? Your internet connection is unstable. All right, this is sort of a test run, by the way. I've never done a live on here before, so we'll give it its best shot. So yeah, there we go. So I hope this is recording too, because that's the main reason I'm doing it. So my thesis is we've completely collapsed church and state. Even the Pope is like doing his best to come up with some sort of framework, and it could happen that the Council of American Bishops or something like that forbid Catholics to either be part of ICE or cooperate with ICE. That could happen. We're a long way from that, though. We have no Constitution. We have no Bill of Rights. J.D. Vance gets up and says the man that shot that woman in Minnesota has immunity. If you have immunity from all legal connections to military, police, even intelligence agencies, you are operating with zero legal restraint. They call that something, it's called terrorism. The Vice President of the United States is advocating for terrorism. This is American ISIS. Now let's talk about the guy in question. He was a door gunner in Iraq. That's like the movie. Have you ever seen the Kubrick movie? What's it called? Full Metal Jacket. You just fly around with an M60 and just execute people as like a video game. That's how that guy was trained. Then he's been part of ICE for 10 years. He has over 30 complaints against them. He is a firearms instructor. He is teaching ICE agents how to do what he did. And I said it yesterday on TikTok. If you look at how it went down, so here, let me show you this. Let me show you this, Linda. Listen to this person. I think it'll pop up here. Listen to this guy.
One grabbed the handle to distract her, while the other moved around to the front of the vehicle to shoot her in the face. And as she drove away, he just let her allow him to slide over to the side and pop it twice through the window.
3 times, actually.
Look like a fucking mob hit. Great.
In case you couldn't understand him, he said it looked like a mob hit. It wasn't like, oh shit, she's going to run over me. I, sort of in a moment of despair, pull my trigger because I don't know what I'm doing. This was orchestrated. If you watch, he's holding the camera in his one hand, and that another thing is like, why is there a thing in ICE? This is my point, that this is terrorism. They want the film of these executions to get online, like ISIS did. Do you remember? There's horrible things when they were running across Iraq and Syria and so forth. They have it all online. It's terrorism. There's no fun having terror unless someone sees it. Okay? Are you saying that this could have been Premeditated? Absolutely. Absolutely. It very well could be that the reason he look at her license plate to confirm that's who she was. And this is why we wear many hats here, because you have to remember this was the book that was written called the Technological Republic. They were going to do this stuff. They were going to use technology so people threaten, cajole, who knows, turn on COVID, whatever crazy thing you want to come up with. The book reviewed last year at this time, the Technological Republic, anticipated all this. It is nothing but a polemic for terrorism. Now, by the way, if you think there's a punchline coming to this that I'm going to say, like, your story, no, because that's what they want you to do. No, this is more of an intellectual thing. Because that's what's really missing in America is everybody. Tim Dillon just did a skit, and he said, I only talk to people about this that are under the age of 10, because at about the age of 10, all Americans get a political ideology. Before that, they can see things clearly. It's Tim Dillon's the smartest guy in North America. So, okay, so he walks around the vehicle. He switches hands from his right hand to his left hand with the phone. He keeps the phone on to generate this video, which then they allowed. Think about this. This is a immigration service allowing this officer who's been with him for 10 years to video a hit. To video, well, you mean like to defend himself? No. You don't get it. This is terrorism. This is how you create the terror. If none of us ever saw the video and we could just sit and go, well, J.D. Vance said he was going to get run over, and no, they have to have the video. Okay. So he goes around, and I thought he shot directly through the window. He didn't, because she turned the wheel and he stepped aside so he wouldn't get run over, but knows in his mind that, like, a moving car, and this is very clearly written in the laws, that you can't, unless it's like an absolute emergency, that the person has like a high power, like some sort of very deadly weapon, has very, very deadly intent. You can't stop a car with your handgun. Even in the tires. I didn't even know that. I thought you were just allowed to go up and just like boom, boom, boom into the tires. Not to do that either. So this was the word I think that applies here is extrajudicial killing. It was way outside the realm of the law. Okay. J.D. Vance, Trump, Stephen Miller. And this is what you're going to have a hard time hearing, but this is what you're going to have to listen to. Stephen Miller is advocating terrorism the same way that the Israelis do. And remember, they asked Einstein to be the first president of Israel. And he said, I will not work with criminals and terrorists. This is who's taken over the U.S. government, people. There's only 55 people on here. Like, there's a much bigger following over on TikTok, but we can't work there anymore. So we have to work here. So if you want to have friends and family, if you have people that are, I don't know how I have to say this, but I do, like, the old, like, I have lots of Jewish friends, but I don't have very many friends at all. But, like, the people who should be paying the most attention to this are American Jews. And I'll double down on that in a minute. So, like Lockjaw, if you've not seen this movie, Sean Penn plays someone who is exactly like this guy, who's like this shooter. What's his name? Jordan Ross or something like that? Lockjaw. This is from the movie. Okay, before I just jump to that, I'm sorry to jump around. The other thing I would say to you is, like, there's a reason to cover your face in special ops, right? So that either for camouflage or so that you can't be retaliated against. But to have tens of thousands of these people run. This is ISIS. This is ISIS, people. What was I looking for you? Oh, yeah. Hold on. So Lockjaw, if you've not seen the movie One Battle After Another, Lockjaw is perfectly. Here he is. Hold on. Let me see if I can go back to it at the beginning. So the character Sean Penn is in love with this black woman, and they have sex and they have a child, and that's the plot. Sorry, spoiler alert. Let me play it again. So it'll there he is right there. That's the shooter. Hold on. The shooter is on Grindr. The shooter has a mail order wife, not MALE, but MAIL, who then becomes a lesbian. He executed a lesbian, and he probably knew it. He probably knew everything about them, just like it's set up in that movie. He probably knew who those two women were in that car. That's why he went back and looked at the license plate, and she says, that's going to be the same license plate the next time you see us, or something like that. In other words, we don't fuck with our license plates. He was sent there by these people. These aren't people, by the way. This is just a machine. That's the joke, right? That's the eye of Dajjal running AI. Okay. This is the book. This is what the Technological Republic said that they were going to do, and they're doing it. And it's terrorism. I'm the only fucking guy that speaks English that'll explain this to you. I had a personal experience recently that was similar to this. And I actually said to the officer, I said, am I on a list? He didn't answer me. He could have said no. He just didn't answer me. So no matter how bad you think this is, you can go watch MSNBC all afternoon and they're just going to keep saying right wing, fascism, right wing, fascism. That's not what this is. It's worse. What do you mean it's worse? It's not just what was, I think it was called, the movie was Mississippi Burning with Gene Hackman, and he goes down and the Mississippi's really sort of run by like the Klan and like this. It's almost like there's like a government underneath the government, right? That's what came out of the Confederacy. That's not what this is. If you know your history of Germany, the I think we're allowed to say Nazi party on here. You're not allowed to say it on TikTok, but I guess you can say it on here. It's sort of weird. You're not allowed to. There's so many words you're not allowed to say on TikTok. It's sort of disturbing. The Nazi party grew out of the occult. It grew out of things like the Ku Klux Klan. Okay, it's not conservative Christian stuff. The fascists in Spain they were strict Catholics, Franco and so forth. That's not what Germany was. Germany was all this weird occult shit. Okay. Now let's hit that for a minute. So Trump is a Templar. We now know that he's part of a kind of Jewish mafia Epstein thing, which connects to Wexner, which I think probably connects to some of the wealthiest people in the world, not the Koch brothers, but like the people that manage the trillions. I always just say Mrs. Rothschild because it's funny. These are all these people, like even like a Stephen Miller. It's really hard to say that like Stephen Miller is a Jew. He doesn't really talk like you couldn't take Stephen Miller into Brooklyn and like, let's have a Seder. Like he's like a character out of this book. He's a Sicarii. This is The Jewish Wars by Josephus. I had to read this at Yale, and I read it about 6 months ago and did a lot of work based on this. This is your reading for 2026 because this is happening. Which brings us back to this church and state thing. You know, the old quip about Benjamin Franklin came out of Independence Hall and there was a newspaper boy and said, "Do we have a democracy?" And he said, "Yeah, if you can keep it." So what has happened is church and state, you can either say that they have merged or submerged. I put up a video here. I'll show it to you. We take for granted in the English-speaking world that we have, I was speaking earlier about Winston Churchill. In the English-speaking world, there's a couple things you take for granted. Like if you own property, you know that old thing, like 90% of the law, possession is 90% of the law. If you have a house or a farm or a horse or whatever, like in the English-speaking world, like it's yours. Like something really bad has to happen before they can take it from you. If you're married, and you're a surgeon and you mistakenly cut off the wrong leg, they can't sue you and take your property if you're married because you own it and the two of you own it in joint tenants in in common? No, in its entirety. So if you're married and you own your house with your wife, you both own 100% of it. It's a weird thing to think about. People can't break down your door. For the first time in 1,000 years, the English-speaking world is being attacked by people who can do whatever they want. The first time in 1,000 years. I would accept that, like, other than Civil War, other than Bleeding Kansas or Cromwell or some shit like that. Other than like these unique periods of warfare, your home is your castle. It's a, you know, it's a cliche. It's an idiom that we all say. These people have none of that. Your data is not your castle. Your computer's not your castle. Your phone's not your castle. If you get pulled over by a policeman and there's any sort of charges against you, the first thing they're going to do is download your phone. I know this from experience. By the way, if you haven't seen the movie, you have to go watch Sean Penn. I don't know how he does this. Like, as soon as you see him, like, you completely understand his character. And it's exactly like this guy, this shooter in Minneapolis, except he's scarier than the Sean Penn character. Let's see if I still have this. No, I think it's in my phone. I had a video of, there he is. Hey, to put your hands on him. This is a house of God. Sir, step back. We're just doing our job. Not one more step. Archbishop, don't please me. This is sacred ground. Nobody wants trouble here. Now, this you can go read. You can go pick up Saint Augustine and the City of God, and he talks about when the barbarians sacked Rome. He said even they were afraid to go into the cathedrals, the basilicas. By the way, the early Catholic basilicas were just the old Roman town halls. And they put a cross up, and early they didn't put a cross up. They put like probably either a fish symbol or there was no iconography at all. But anyways, for the first time, this is my point to you: church and state is over. Church and state, everything that we think about it, everything that we talk about, the first sentence of the Bill of Rights. Remember, they weren't going to pass the Constitution. Was it like 10 or 12? It was like 8 states or something like said no. They read the Constitution and said, no, what will eventually happen is this Constitution, this document, will be used to overwhelm the states. Linda? Just hear his voice, right? Like, and they're going to start fucking just taking these people out. Like in Palestine, they just they would just hit that guy right over the fucking head, wrap him up in a tarp, and hang him upside down. It's coming, people. It's here.
You have no right to put your hands on him. This is a house of God. Step back. We're just doing our job. Not one more step. All right, Bishop, don't please me. This is sacred ground. Nobody wants trouble here. Let's.
It's worse than the Civil War, isn't it? What am I looking for? Oh. Article 1, Bill of Rights. Remember in 4th grade when you had to study this? Sorry, just give me a second. You know, for so much talk about the Bill of Rights, they sometimes just don't really read them to you. Back to the main Bill of Rights page. Preamble. The Convention Member States Preamble. Back to the main page. But I don't know why this is taking so long to find. But you should really go read the First and Second Amendment. Everybody knows the Second Amendment's about. We should probably talk about that for a minute, about weapons. And a well-regulated militia. That's another thing you could say is clearly ICE is not a well-regulated militia. Right? And the first thing Trump did when he came in is start using the National Guard as a federal militia, so to speak, and moving them, right? Taking the ones from Texas and going to Chicago. I actually don't know how a lot of you white people aren't out of your fucking minds about this. I think it's because so many white men actually want this to happen. I think it's like over 40%. In other words, what I'm getting at is, if there wasn't the popular push to do this, this wouldn't have happened. There's nobody doing anything about this. But the First Amendment says, the First Amendment's not about speech. The First Amendment is about religion. Go read it. I'll paraphrase it because I don't know why it's not popping up. You'd think it'd be much easier to find the First Amendment on Google, but it's weird that way. Congress shall pass no law establishing nor permitting the free expression of religion. It goes from religion to speech, and it clearly connects the two. It knows that the religion part will be used to suppress speech, which brings up our little trip with TikTok yesterday. So I had to go through TikTok training. It has, so I took pictures of it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I completed the training. It was 5 questions. TikTok does not allow hate speech, hateful behavior, or promotion or hateful ideologies. That includes content that attacks people based on protected attributes like race, religion, gender, or sexual orientation. Using one example of harm caused by an immigrant to suggest all immigrants are dangerous. Yes, this is a violation. TikTok does not allow hate speech, hateful behavior, or the promotion of hateful ideologies. That includes content that attacks people based on their protected attributes like race, religion, gender, or sexual orientation. Claiming one race is better than all the others. Yes, that is about violation. You're going to get the irony of this in about 10 seconds. TikTok does not allow hate speech, hateful behavior, or promotion of hateful ideologies. That includes content that attacks people based on their protected attributes like race, religion, gender, or sexual orientation. For example, showing art containing hate symbols in support of hateful ideologies. Yes, that is a violation. Spreading conspiracy. TikTok does not allow hate, the same thing. Spreading conspiracy theories that Jewish people control the media. Yes, that is a violation. Using misspelled slurs to attack people from certain countries. I don't understand the misspelled slur thing, but that's okay. Yes, it is a violation. And then I completed my training. So we used to have laws that said you weren't allowed to incite violence against people. Now we have hate speech. What is it? Nobody knows what hate speech is. When someone uses the N word, is that hate speech? Nobody really understands that. Again, there's a connection. What I'm getting at is there's now a connection between the first line of the First Amendment and the second line. That's religion and speech. Speech is now controlled by its reaction with religion. Okay? And it's not right-wing Christian nationalists. Over the holidays, I watched the movie Beckett. It's from the late 60s. It's Peter O'Toole and Richard Burton. And the king and the Archbishop of Canterbury, this is before the Reformation, of course, they have a falling out, and like the Archbishop is murdered, and it's real history. Becket was made a saint and so forth. But it's one of those things that like shows you the experience of the West since the Roman Empire is all about church and state being somewhat at odds with each other, because as the Roman Empire imploded, it corresponded with an implosion of Roman religion as well, which then became Christian religion. So what came out of what's your Roman Empire? You know, that cliche, that meme you hear on TikTok is our ideas about church and state. And my thesis for you today is, yeah, I've been on here for half an hour. It's about right. Is all of our Western ideas about the economy, legal framework, constitutional democracy, a republic, Bill of Rights. We're talking about things that don't apply anymore. It's not this, people. It's not this. Okay? This isn't what's going on. This emphasis on fascism, that's not what's going on. It's worse. This is a completely packaged idea of technology, of law, because the technology now is the law. That's what Alex Karp argues in the Technological Republic. Constitution's over. Congress is over. The nice people, the House of Representatives and Senate of the nice people of Minnesota is over. They don't have anything. That's how significant this is. Someone this morning on TikTok said, where are all the Proud Boys and the guys with the "Don't Tread on Me" flag who now argue that a federal firearms instructor is allowed to execute lesbians in their SUV? They have perfectly taken the most powerful elements of both left and right. On the left, we have the Silicon Valley, this thing, okay? And we've merged that with what we call MAGA, the most the people most at odds with the Constitution. And these people always said that they were going to prevent the federal government from taking over. And they merged both sides of left and right into this thing. Like, this is why with the Epstein files, we realized, like, Jesus Christ, Steve Bannon works with Jeffrey Epstein. Noam Chomsky hangs out with Jeffrey Epstein. Okay, sunshine. Gives us something to think about that's positive. We're going to fall back onto the states and this paramilitary mercenary force running around, Border Patrol, ICE, all these people that have immunity. JD Vance said they have immunity. I don't. Does that mean that you can, like, go kidnap your daughter and take her to the hotel room? Is that fucking immunity too? Let's all calm down. The sooner Americans wake up and realize that they have to pay attention to not some sort of bullshit plan to mine asteroids and touch the face of God with computers, but look around them and realize that their community around them is their community around them. It's the states and local and neighbors and homeless people and churches and the real world around them. I'd encourage you to go listen to a woman from Harvard named Dr. Epps, just like it's on EPPS. And she's telling us we have to get off these systems. We have to de-Google, de-Microsoft, de-this, de-that. I played Delight, the dance club song from the 90s. We're going to fall back onto the states, whether we realize it or not. It's going to get worse as they bring in these data centers that are going to boil the water table. They're going to make the water table untenable for human life in certain places. Now, over there is a newspaper that I don't know, a year and a half ago, I read from it over there, but I keep looking over at it like, wonder if I should go read that. Probably make another video. The states can't print money like the federal government can. Let's just talk about that for a minute. Clearly, the economic plan for the federal government is to inflate the debt away and inflate the debt not just into T-bills, but into crypto. Okay, I've spent a lot of time explaining that on here. The demand for treasuries isn't going to come from the usual suspects. It's going to come from this brave new world of what we call crypto and blockchain and so forth. I've spent a lot of time talking about that and will continue to do so, but not for today. So we're going to fall back onto a political and economic crisis onto the states, which do not have the ability to create money. That will lead to a kind of great reset where states may not be able to pay the bills, they may not be able to pay for healthcare, they may not be able to pay the interest on their municipal bonds, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. For example, here in Pennsylvania, the governor announced that they may have to take the Pennsylvania grid off of the coast, disconnect it from the grid on the East Coast because we have lots of, we don't have any. That's what's coming. A disintegration, we use the word disintegrate to mean like go to nothing, but disintegrate means breaking up and breaking apart. Non-integration. That's what's coming. Now, our fourth turning friends told us exactly this was going to happen in 1991, which is interesting. I always like to point out 1991 is when the Soviet Union ended and grunge music started, and two guys wrote a book called The Fourth Turning. They anticipated that in 2025, going into 2026, pretty good prediction, 35 years, that two things would happen. We would have an authoritarian form of government, and that form of government would be very destructive. And that the real battle will be not to overthrow the authoritarian system, but the authoritarian system will have to reconstruct things the way FDR did through the Depression. So for 5 years on here, I frequently have this like silly skit that I like end these pieces with, and I'll go like, someday I'm like, I don't even really know what I'm saying. I'm just sort of babbling. I'm like, I think someday it's going to be like the war on terror comes home. Check. It's going to be like the Confederacy, like upside down, like Washington, D.C. becomes like Richmond. Check. It's going to be like the end of Gone with the Wind, where like they pass the hat for all the gold and silver. Check. It's going to be like, what was her name? What's Vivian Lee's character called? Miss Scarlet. Scarlett O'Hara like jumps in the like grab the baby, jump in the cart, and let's go back to Tara and plant turnips in the front yard and marry a guy with a uh what does he have? It's not a carpenter. He is like um a lumber mill. She marries this guy just because he has a lumber mill, because she says, quote, God help me, I'll never be poor again. That's what we're headed into. We're headed into the end of Gone with the Wind, right? And if you really understand literature, this is like how literature works. Like you could take Blood Meridian, Moby Dick, and Gone with the Wind, and they all are coming true. We are reliving Blood Meridian. If you know, you know. These people are that guy who murdered that woman in cold blood in an SUV is a character out of Blood Meridian. He is a pure killing machine. Now, give me a second. I'll go get this. This is really a great prop. Like I was doing lives and shit, and this was like on the wall beside me, and I was like, wow. This is Wednesday, April 26th, 1865. It's the local newspaper. My mom found this somewhere and put it behind glass. So I'm not going to read the whole thing. At some point, I would like to take it somewhere and get it all like properly scanned so that you can read it. So it's the assassination of Lincoln. It's the first speech of President Johnson. Trump is a lot like President Johnson. And then as you get to the end, the war is over. The Confederates are going home. Here's the most disturbing part, is the final paragraph. Mr. Washburne of Illinois returned to the city from Washington, that is, Appomattox Courthouse yesterday. He was present at the final surrender of Lee's entire army and witnessed the laying down of their arms. He was the only civilian present. He describes the scene as being one of the most impressive ever witnessed. When he left, 35,000 paroles had been issued, and 134 pieces of artillery had been returned as captured. He saw and convened with Lee and all the prominent rebel generals. Three of them, Gordon, Wilcox, and Alexander, came with his escort to Petersburg. They all acknowledged themselves subdued and were anxiously working round to find out what was to be their destiny. Now, here's the last paragraph. He represents the rebel army as being perfectly worn out and in the most miserable condition possible. There was great scarcity of rations and forage, and the horses of the rebels were dying by hundreds of starvation. Major General Gibbon was in command at Appomattox, and the morning Mr. Washburn left, General Lee had sent in a request for an escort for him and his staff to Richmond to protect him from the stragglers of both armies. 3 of the most prominent citizens of Lynchburg visited General Gibbon to implore him to instantly to send a force there to protect the city from rebel soldiers and from the mob which threatened its destruction. There's no food, there's no order, there's no nothing. The rebels, both officers and men, were in a state of the most deplorable destitution and without rations, without money, and with no clothing except what they had on their backs. Now, I don't just read that as like a sort of a pornographic thing. But there's 3,000 ice, and a small portion of them aren't just like ice guys with the things on. A certain contingent of them are rapid response forces. They're ISIS people. This isn't a joke. They're sending ISIS to Minnesota. And anybody gets in their fucking way, be it the governor or an archbishop or the hospital or principal or president of a university, they're going to capture that son of a bitch, roll him up in a tarp, and hang him upside down like they do in Palestine. That's what's coming. We have no religious or legal framework to resist this. And as soon as you get on here, all of this is being recorded. All of this is being followed by Palantir. Everywhere you go, when I get on the airplane tomorrow, they'll know where I am. They'll be able, everything that's going on right now is being read by AI. There's no way to get away from this. Now, the founder of Ethereum, really, you're going to go into Ethereum after the, yeah? Mm-hmm. The founder of Ethereum has isolated that there's 3 things running the Western world. Big business, I'm going to call it big tech. Like nobody's really afraid of Exxon, right? Exxon just wants to make oil and make money, right? It's like Landman. Big tech, big government, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, the 3-letter agencies, DARPA, etc. And what Vitalik Buterin calls big mob. Now, what happened at the end of this? What happened at the end of the Civil War? What replaced the Confederacy? Something that looks a lot like ISIS. Guys that ran around with their face covered and intimidated and captured and tortured people. They were called the Ku Klux Klan. They're back.